Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint by Sing Shong. Chapter 224. Asmodeus. Part 4. What the hell is this guy thinking? Aileen pulled out the catheter and muttered as he watched Kim Dokja lying down. Fragments of the story were trickling from the bandages. For now, this is the only way. I hadn't wanted to use it. Aileen hurriedly raised her courage, swept up the fragments, and took the pulse of the other arm. Kim Dokja's face was pale and no warmth could be felt. Bring more story packs. Quickly. The people watching ran out of the treatment room at Eileen's cry. Aileen watched the face of the dying Kim Dokja and recalled his last words. Just let me die for an hour or so. Ah, of course, it isn't really dying. It is just on the verge of dying. I really will go to see Kim Namwon if I die at this time. I will trust you. Understood? Beep beep. The story stability levels on the patient's stability monitor were dropping sharply. Aileen watched Kim Dokja sleeping with an unknown expression and inserted a new story into his veins. Fortunately, the third stage of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint was connected properly. Aileen had done her work properly. By the way, Asmodeus' energy was blazing in front of me. I was in a state of tension, unlike my previous declaration. The opponent was Asmodeus. I felt a bit of regret for using words that were too impressive at the beginning, but now it was too late for regret. Asmodeus finally opened his mouth. Demon King of Salvation? I nodded with Yu Jonghyuk's head. I felt Yu Jonghyuk's soul struggling in one corner of the ego, but I forced him to fall asleep. Yu Jonghyuk couldn't pop out at this time. I am the Demon King of Salvation. The use of my true voice consumed an excessive amount of probability, but I pretended to be calm. I deliberately used my true voice in order to not be pushed back by his momentum. The bonus was that maintaining my true voice made me look strong. Asmodeus glanced at me with surprise and asked again. He is really your incarnation? That's right. The unconscious Yu Jonghyuk would be furious if he knew this, but I didn't think and said it anyway. There was no better answer in the current situation. At least, that's what I thought. I didn't hear that you have such an incarnation. Your information network seems to be slower than I thought. This person is my incarnation. Asmodeus had definitely come here to talk with me. The credibility of his words couldn't be determined, but this was the only way for Yu Jonghyuk to survive. If he really came to talk, he wouldn't do anything unnecessary like touching my incarnation. HRMM. Asmodeus didn't seem to accept my words as his energy gradually became strong. I desperately recalled the information about Asmodeus that I knew. An indulgent madman. A member of the Gourmet Association. He has a slight acquaintance with the underworld of Olympus. The owner of Crooked Libido. There were a few things that could be of some help, but there was nothing I could use right now. Either way, it would be best to solve this confrontation as smoothly as possible. I raised my senses as much as possible and searched the vicinity for anything that could help me. The only thing that stood out was the small stuffed doll attached to my shoulders. What is this? That jerk, Yu Jonghyuk, actually collected such things? Then the doll suddenly looked at me. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is so moved she has a nosebleed. Wait. Surely this doll. The constellation demon-like Judge of Fire is rubbing her cheek against you. The doll softly touched Yu Jonghyuk's cheek and I felt it through Yu Jonghyuk's body. I was panicked. Why was Uriel here? Asmodeus opened his mouth. I guess the rumors are true if you're not shrinking back before my status. You became narrative grade in the 10th scenario. I can't believe it is true. I don't know. It might be more than rumors. I pulled the Uriel doll and quickly hid her in my arms. The atmosphere was strange, but it would be difficult if Uriel did something. Asmodeus licked his lips. Hoo-hoo, the story about your tongue seems true. It is to my taste. By the way, how are you alive? I heard from the constellations that you died. I have good luck. You also like having secrets. I hate people who keep trying to pry secrets from me. Is this person your new incarnation? I heard that children are your taste. What bullshit is that? Then my hard work preparing this wasn't worthwhile. Asmodeus smiled at me in a charming manner while looking down at his child's incarnation body. He had the appearance of a pretty child. If Han Myungo was right, this child must be Han Myungo's daughter. Fortunately, she didn't resemble Han Myungo at all. There seems to be some misunderstanding. Many false rumors have spread. The rumors spread about me taking Shin Yusung as my incarnation. He understood what I was saying, and Asmodeus smiled at Yu Jonghyuk's face. Indeed, I can bend my taste if it is this beautiful body. At this point, it was clear that a normal conversation was impossible. I spoke roughly. Stop talking with your true voice. There won't be any incarnations left around me. Why? This is now my industrial complex. I want you to stop killing my citizens. Officially, Jillabat died because of Kim Dokja, and this became my industrial complex. You are the new owner of the industrial complex. In fact, these messages were actually rising. Of course, I actually needed a good excuse to stop using my true voice. Asmodeus spoke with a small smile. Yes. I'm sorry. Asmodeus did it half-heartedly, but he was polite when he had a purpose. At least, until his purpose was met. Then why did you come for me? It sounds like you already know. Right? How should I know? I'm not a prophet. I know you have a similar power to the prophet of Asgard. He was probably talking about Anna Croft. I didn't know how much of my story had spread and twisted. Whatever the rumors, it was clear that now was the time to lay the foundation on this side. Maybe it is because of the Demon King selection. Asmodeus grinned at the answer. It wasn't hard to guess. It was because shortly after the industrial complex had fallen, the following message was heard. You are currently a Demon King candidate of the 73rd Demon Realm. A new scenario is currently pending. Are you aiming for a new throne? Huh? I already have the 32nd Demon Realm. It is pointless to gain one with a lower rank. Then what? I want to help you become a new Demon King. As expected, he said it. Han Myungo had told me something similar. The Demon King, he told me to make the 73rd Demon King with my own hands. I thought for a moment before shaking my head. I'm sorry, but I don't need help. I currently have no desire to participate in the competition. I don't think you have the veto rights? You have to participate in the selection as soon as you become a duke. I can survive with my own strength. Well, you might have been lucky until now. Will it continue in the future? Do you think Duke Meladon and Burken have the same thoughts as you? It was known that nebulae were already attached to them. They were also nebulae hostile towards me. Asmodeus laughed. You need my help. You will die if you refuse. It was unknown who would kill me, but he seemed certain I would die. Fucking bastard. Did he come all this way only to grab my ankle? A small number of constellations are watching your choice. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is watching your choice. The constellation Who Likes to Change Sex is watching your choice. I moved to this location and asked Bayou to expand the channel. Thus, the constellations were watching my choice. Most constellations felt reluctant towards Demon Kings. My future story would be determined depending on the choice I made here. I took a calm breath and asked, is your purpose the giant story? Something stirred in Asmodeus' eyes at my words. I'm surprised that you already know about such a thing. It is the only reason why guys like you would cut off their nose in the blink of an eye. I smiled bitterly. A giant story. If the stories I had accumulated so far were in the category of general stories, there was a new field in the star stream called giant stories. For example, things like Olympus Gigantomachia and Asgard's Ragnarok. By building a small stake in a giant story, the constellations could gain enormous power and probability. If they occupied a large stake, then they would become a huge power. This was why the constellations rushed with fiery eyes every time the apocalypse scenario occurred. The Demon World's Demon King selection was one such giant story. It wasn't comparable to Gigantomachia, but it was large compared to general stories. Asmodeus nodded. You are correct. I need the shares of a giant story. Asmodeus was already a demon king and belonged to a higher level scenario, so he couldn't participate in the selection. However, he could help me in exchange for a stake in the story. Originally, I would have refused the proposal. The giant story that could be accumulated through the Demon King selection would become the key foundation for my future fight against the nebulae. If I gave a share in it to the wrong person, it was likely I wouldn't be able to obtain anything. However, Yu Zhonghyuk of the 12th regression had mumbled. At that time, we shouldn't have pretended to support the Demon King Asmodeus. I wanted to grab the collar of the 12th regression Yu Zhonghyuk and ask what he meant, but the person now was only in the 3rd regression. In the end, I had to make a choice. Should I grab the hand of the Demon King or not? I slowly opened my mouth. Chapter 225. Asmodeus. Part 5. How funny. I'm not even a Demon King yet. How can I give away the stakes in a giant story I don't have? You can do it if I help. Asmodeus had an arrogant confidence on his face. It was an expression that made becoming a Demon King simple. I watched his face and followed up with, okay, I will give away a stake if I become a Demon King. At this moment, the stars in the sky were flashing. A few constellations are greatly disappointed in your judgment. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is looking at you with troubled eyes. The constellation Who Likes to Change Sex wants to change your sex. The constellation showed a strong reaction as I expected. However, I couldn't help it for now. Unless I knew how to not lost against Asmodeus, I couldn't do anything that would antagonize him. Asmodeus laughed like he was satisfied with my answer. Good thinking. How much will you give away? 30%. Light disappointment flashed across Asmodeus' face. It is too little. Don't you think you're being too greedy? 50% and write the contract here. What a shameless swindler. If I gave away half of a giant story, I wouldn't be able to draw on its strength without Asmodeus' permission. I firmly shook my head. I can't sign that agreement. Why? The pebbles started to float into the air. This was blatant intimidation, but I wouldn't have come here if I would be caught by such intimidation. I stared up at the sky and kept speaking, I won't give a stake to just you. A deep silence instantly fell at my words. Asmodeus' face was blank and he didn't understand what I meant. The stars all around me were holding their breaths and demanding clarification. 30% of the giant story will be released as competitive shares. Competitive shares? It means whoever helps me can gain part of those shares. The extent that they obtained will depend entirely on their contribution to the story. The gazes staring at me from the sky started to change one by one. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is making an interested expression. A few constellations are greedy after hearing your words. Competitive shares was the last card I could offer. If I had to take a beast with me while moving forward, it would be better to expand the choice of beasts. Asmodeus noticed my intentions and his expression hardened. I was deceived. I didn't lie. The pebbles floating in the air rushed towards me, to be precise, towards Yu Zhonghyuk. It was a strong attack that couldn't be easily blocked. It might have been hard for me in the past, but not now. It was because now I wasn't alone. The stones flying through the air were caught by invisible hands. A few constellations are staring at the Demon King of Fury and Lust. It was a situation where I declared a competitive share in a giant story. The constellations aiming for those shares wouldn't just watch Asmodeus' actions. Asmodeus gritted his teeth. However, even Asmodeus didn't want to waste probability in this place against a large number of constellations. In addition, there was a formidable constellation present. The constellation Prisoner of the Golden Headband is staring at the Demon King of Fury and Lust. Asmodeus stared at the air for a while, before taking back his strength. The stones lost their support and instantly fell to the ground. The demon king of lust and fury is disappointed in you. Asmodeus spoke with a terrifying expression. You have made a mistake. You are not the one who will become demon king. You just threw away an important opportunity. It was a tone that suggested he could give the opportunity to someone else at any time. Certainly, things would become complicated if Asmodeus joined hands with someone else. Nevertheless, I didn't back down. Well, I think you are the one throwing away the opportunity, not me. I thought about why Asmodeus must have chosen me. Common sense said it was more advantageous for Asmodeus to be attacked to Burkan or Meladon rather than me. I was a human and a constellation, while Meladon and Burkan were demons. Yet Asmodeus extended his hand towards me first. There was a compelling reason for Asmodeus to choose me. In fact, Asmodeus' expression seemed a bit strained at my refusal. It is really unpleasant. Don't you know that I am a demon king? A great demon was making this type of expression. It was an extremely rare scene from the perspective of ways of survival. I slowly shook my head. It doesn't matter if you are a demon king or constellation. I just want my story to be the best story. The best story? You should know what I mean since you belong to the Gourmet Association. Asmodeus' expression changed at the words I deliberately mentioned. It was a face that was both bewildered and delighted. Asmodeus gazed at me with an expression that was hard for humans to describe and opened his mouth a few dozen seconds later. A candidate will test the cooking skills of a demon king. I held my breath at the formidable killing intent aimed at me. It was like the whole time and space of the area was in the demon king's grasp. The confused constellation squeezed out light, but the darkness around them was so dense that their power couldn't reach. This was the real power of a demon king. If Asmodeus truly used all his power here, I was convinced that Yu Zhonghyuk and I would have vanished regardless of the prisoner of the golden headband's presence. He was revealing this power now as a type of proof and warning. The demon king Asmodeus reveals a subtle liking towards you. It was a warning that he could kill me at any time. Asmodeus laughed from inside the darkness. I like it. I will leave for today. Fortunately, the situation seemed to be wrapped up. I didn't pretend to support Asmodeus, and he didn't one-sidedly lose his shares of the story. There was plenty of room to change things. However, I should clean up the garbage before I go. Asmodeus moved his fingers, and an explosive sound was heard from my chest. It was the sound of a doll popping. There was a throbbing pain around my heart, but Yu Zhonghyuk's body didn't receive any apparent damage. Asmodeus' body scattered into ashes as he left these last words. I can't see that thing wandering around in front of me. I gazed at the disappearing Asmodeus before hurriedly touching my chest. Uriel? I pulled out that Uriel doll that was already tattered. Not long afterwards, I felt something being disconnected from the doll. I saw the messages rising in front of you. Zhonghyuk's eyes. The connection with the constellation demon-like Judge of Fire has been temporarily disconnected. The personal scenario has been automatically terminated. I was able to see how Yu Zhonghyuk came here. I didn't know why, but Uriel gave him a personal scenario to go to the demon world. Yu Zhonghyuk received that scenario and came here. The problem was the scenario had just been forcibly terminated. Sparks started appearing around my skin. I instantly realized what would happen. Uriel. Wake up. I desperately shook the doll, but there was no reaction from Uriel. The symbolic body was excessively broken and the connection with the body was forcibly terminated. Shit. Cracks were spreading over Yu Zhonghyuk's hard body. You have left the main scenario. I hurriedly looked around. This couldn't continue. At this rate, Yu Zhonghyuk would surely die. The exile penalty has begun. It was different from me. Yu Zhonghyuk didn't have the fourth wall. There wasn't anyone to protect him after becoming an exile. Hey! Anybody is good. I hurriedly shouted towards the sky. However, Yu Zhonghyuk's body was destroyed and my voice didn't emerge. The cracks that started in the legs spread to the neck and paralyzed the vocal cords. It was a penalty that prevented me from asking the constellations in the night sky for help. The whole universe was intensely hoping for Yu Jong-hyuk's death, as if it was going to take away his stories and kill him. Was it up to here? I couldn't let it. Everything was over if Yu Jong-hyuk died here. In less than 1 second, the pages of Ways of Survival passed through my head. The letters on countless pages flew towards me, and I reached out to them. Yes, this was the only way. I didn't have it, but Yu Jong-hyuk was different. I was forced to ask him for help. The constellation Demon King of Salvation is looking at Yu Jong-hyuk's sponsor. I wanted to use my true voice, but now I had no strength. I was forced to hope that my story would reach that existence. The sponsor of incarnation, Yu Jong-hyuk, is looking at you. A huge presence was looking at me. It was somewhat familiar, but also unfamiliar. Before I could open my mouth, a darkness came over me. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint Stage 3, has been forcibly released. A space covered with darkness. I had this experience once before. When was it? It happened when I exited from the Constellation Banquet. How to change? No. Damn it, what the hell did this mean? Heek. I shot up and gasped like I was going to vomit. My heart was beating like crazy, and there was a cracking sound from my neck. My eyes were full of tears. I was alive. To be precise, Aileen saved me. However, I felt more desperate than relieved. I shouted in a thick voice towards the outside of the treatment room. Aileen! Aileen, who had been waiting outside, rushed over at my call. She was pale when she saw me pulling out the catheter. I shook off her hands and shouted, "Quickly get me up. I have to go to the Jilabat Industrial Complex." What are you talking about? A person who just woke up, there is no time, quickly. Dozens of thoughts crossed my head. Let's ask the great sage, the equal of heaven, for help. If not, let's call Hermes. I hated it, but I might be able to get a favor using the shares of the story. I just had to get to Jilabat right away. It wasn't too late yet. Go right now. There is no way for a person who has been unconscious for 1 week. You will have to rest for at least 1 week to stabilize your body. What? It felt like my heart stopped beating. I thought it was an auditory hallucination. The world that I read was collapsing. The letters that lost their place were pushing at me. How much time has passed? A week. You have been unconscious for a week. I looked blankly at the floor before picking up the smartphone that Irene created. I turned on the panel and checked the file. -3 Ways to Survive in a Ruined World, First Revision, .txt. The title of the text was unchanged. The second revision didn't come, and Yu Jong-hyuk's lines were the same. There was a moment of despair as I realized that nothing had changed. Really? Yu Jong-hyuk really died? Chapter 226. Asmodeus. Part 6. My hands were trembling, but I took a deep breath and regained my composure. No. Yu Jong-hyuk couldn't be dead. Above all, the message that caught my attention was evidence. You are currently waiting for the next main scenario. Based on common sense, Yu Jong-hyuk shouldn't be given the exile penalty. It was because Yu Jong-hyuk would have entered a new scenario like me. There might be variations for individual scenarios, but he became a duke as soon as I became a duke. It meant that, like me, Yu Jong-hyuk was a Demon King candidate. There is currently a delay in the compensation due to an error in the Starstream system. However, there was this one message. It was very rare to acquire a story or achievement through impersonation in the Starstream. This time, Yu Jong-hyuk and I impersonated each other and made achievements in each other's name. What if the main scenario of the Starstream was twisted because of this? I entered the main scenario safely, but what if Yu Jong-hyuk didn't enter? Was that why the exile penalty began? Are you okay? Do you have a glass of water? Aileen stared at me with disbelieving eyes for a moment. Don't pull out the catheter again while I'm gone. Aileen left the room and I calmly re-examined the situation. I had to be composed. It wasn't clear whether Yoo Jong-hyuk had died or not. It was likely that he had been killed by the start of the exile penalty just prior to the release of Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, but absolute certainty was a taboo in the star stream. I needed to first confirm Yoo Jong-hyuk's life or death properly. Bayou. Bayou had expanded the channel to the Jillabat side. If Bayou helped, I might be able to see the area using the eyes of a constellation. Bayou. Do you hear me? Did something happen? There was no response from Bayou. I couldn't even hear the messages from other constellations. I felt uneasy for a moment. What happened to Bayou while I was away? Huh? I listened quietly and could hear Bayou breathing near me. Bayou's transparent body was lying on my chest, fast asleep. I sighed with relief. I would have been devastated if something happened to Bayou. I'm sorry. I stroked Bayou's head. According to Ways of Survival, a Dakibi must sleep for at least half a day when it was just born. I was sleeping, so it wasn't strange for Bayou to have fallen asleep. It was a situation where Bayou had exhausted her strength due to overworking. I decided to use the second method. The exclusive skill, Omniscient Reader's Viewpoint, has been activated. Then my temples started throbbing. The skill is cancelled due to accumulated damage. Damn, this didn't work either. It seemed that I suffered a huge blow when my link with Yoo Jong-hyuk was severed. In the end, I picked up the smartphone again. It was the first time I felt so helpless. I didn't know if Yoo Jong-hyuk was dead or not, and the only thing I could do was read the novel. No, don't think like this. Kim Dokja, please wake up. You've survived so far, thanks to this novel. I bit my lips and opened Ways of Survival again. Everything came from this story. Thus, the answer would be in the story. The attribute effect has increased speed reading. I read the book with wide eyes, not missing a single word or sentence. At that time, we shouldn't have pretended to support the Demon King Asmodeus. It was hard to see it as Yoo Jong-hyuk and I pretending to support Asmodeus this time. I might have deceived him, but in the end, there was a nuance that he would still cooperate with us. I couldn't be sure that Yoo Jong-hyuk was dead with this sentence alone. The 13th round. The 134H round. Yoo Jong-hyuk's regressions continued. It took longer than before, but his spirit was gradually worn down by the continuous regressions. It is hard. The 18th round. I want to quit now. The 21st round. Damn it, damn it, damn it. I read about Yoo Jong-hyuk's despair and also felt my heart burning. As time went by, Yoo Jong-hyuk returned to his original pessimistic form. A regressor who survived every regression using the principles of only thinking about himself. I can't change anything. He went back, and went back again. In the second half of the novel, there was no big difference with the Ways of Survival that I read before. Apart from the first half that I influenced, Yoo Jong-hyuk made similar mistakes and regained similar tendencies. Damn, a few more times. I spent several months with Yoo Jong-hyuk, but I was only able to have this much influence on the novel. I wanted to reach out to the frustrated Yoo Jong-hyuk, but Yoo Jong-hyuk was in a place I couldn't reach. The 25th, 26th, 27th rounds. Yoo Jong-hyuk constantly repeated the regressions, and I had to stop reading. It was painful to read. The original Ways of Survival was a story like this. How did I read all 3,149 chapters? Due to my irregular breathing, Bayou attached to my chest was moving uncomfortably. I remembered the page number before scrolling down to the bottom. It might be burdensome to follow this story right now, but there was something I had to check first. Did Yoo Jong-hyuk reach the proper ending in the first revision? Did the author write the epilogue? The screen hitched badly while I was scrolling due to the poor performance of the smartphone. How long did I scroll down? I finally reached the spot where the original ending should be. However, I only found a huge void. Current being edited. There was a one-line message. I was swept away by two different emotions. Haha. The emoticon that followed the word edited angered me, but some of the possibilities that came from the message made me excited. This story could still be changed. There was a way even if Yu Jong-hyuk was dead. Somehow I had to bring him back to this regression. I scrolled through with a determined feeling. Then the sentences that were written in the section before the ending caught my attention. Before the end of the scenario, Yu Jong-hyuk recalled countless memories of his death. In the third round, I almost died the first time I met Asmodeus. I had too many thoughts. Wait. This was currently the third round. There was a knock on the door, and I raised my head to see Mark. He saw that I was awake and waved. "Our revolutionary. You woke up? It is fortunate. What is going on?" "Nothing. I just wanted to let you know that someone came to see you." I was busy and wanted to tell him to come back later when Mark continued speaking. "The owner of the industrial complex is looking for you." "Huh? The owner of the industrial complex has come to visit you." What did he mean? Wasn't I the owner of the industrial complex? Get out of the way. The next moment, someone pushed past Mark and entered the room. It was a presence that changed the atmosphere just by standing there. I stared blankly at the man with my mouth gaping open. Yu Jong-hyuk, who I thought was dead, was standing in front of me. It took me a bit more time to come to my senses. Aileen, who came back, glanced at us and disappeared after arranging the table, while the blankly standing Mark also avoided this place. Once the surroundings became quiet, I opened my mouth first. "When did you come here?" 2 days ago. I was ashamed of myself for freaking out in the last 10 minutes. The man I had been worried about was walking around the same industrial complex, while I had all sorts of delusions about his death. "How did you survive?" "It was a situation where you couldn't survive. I received a bit of help." "From who? Was it your sponsor?" "That guy has never helped me once." I asked for his help, but I didn't think he would actually help. From the beginning to the end of Ways of Survival, all he did was make Yu Jong-hyuk regress. Yu Jong-hyuk's wounds had healed and he looked quite healthy. A constellation helped me. A constellation? Who? You don't need to know the details. What did you give in exchange? None of them would help for nothing. I just received a slight penalty. Penalty? Until the Demon World scenario is over, I will disappear for 10 minutes a day. Disappear? What does this mean? Something like that. In any case, I have now entered the main scenario and the scenario error has been resolved. There is no need to worry about it. Yu Jong-hyuk's expression while speaking seemed like he had solved something. It was somewhat troubling. I had fallen asleep for a week and Yu Jong-hyuk survived with the help of someone unrelated to me. Then he came here to become the ruler of the industrial complex. Perhaps it was because it was rare to talk to Yu Jong-hyuk like this. An awkward silence filled the treatment room. Yu Jong-hyuk stared blankly down at the table while drinking tea. I wanted to ask why he came here. I wanted to ask what he would do in the future. However, completely different words emerged from my mouth. The others, are they doing well? In fact, Yu Jong-hyuk couldn't know. He was a person who only filled his head with the scenarios. Such a person wouldn't care about what other people were doing. I deliberately wanted to nag at him. Please don't live your life alone. If he lived like that, he could never reach the end of the scenario. I meant to give this speech. By the way, Lee Hyun-sung went to the army. Yu Jong-hyuk started talking. Young Hee-won and Lee Jae-hai are training new incarnations. They are strengthening their power and preparing for the future disaster scenarios. Yu Sang-ga and Han Soo-young are in contact with government officials. The two of them are together? It was the first time I saw Yu Jong-hyuk saying so many words. Maybe this was why I fell into his story. Gong Pil-do is buying land in Songnam to build a huge castle. He seems to really think he is a king. Haha, that a juicy is really. The two children are doing well. They seem to throw a coin every time they are bored. I was fascinated as Yu Jong-hyuk continued to speak in a blunt voice. Some stories were easy to understand, while others took a bit more time. Nevertheless, they were all stories of someone I knew. The people I liked were living stories in a place where I didn't exist. As I listened, I felt somewhat sweet, sad, and nostalgic. Everybody is busy living. I felt a strange loneliness at the end of the story. I see. Everyone was living well. The exclusive skill fourth wall is shaking. I realized that I was an outsider of this story. The 25th regression, Yu Jong-hyuk said, I can't change anything. Without me, people were still continuing the scenarios. Just like Yu Jong-hyuk repeated the regressions. The 4th, 5th, 6th rounds, it led to an endless story where I could be easily forgotten. Meanwhile, people would move towards the ending. It was natural. It might be natural, but I felt pained at the reminder. I bit my lips and tried to say something. I'm glad. The words didn't emerge from my mouth. Then I heard Yu Jong-hyuk's voice. In addition, everyone is telling your story. I slowly raised my head at the words. Yu Jong-hyuk's face was still expressionless. They say it a lot. Your story. I smiled slightly while covering my eyes with both hands. I didn't appear so on the surface, but I wanted to say that I was smiling. In the small darkness created with both hands, Yu Jong-hyuk's voice was heard again as he drank tea. Let's go back to Earth, Kim Dokja.